tomar demasiado tiempo del siguiente panel.
Mi nombre es Raúl Rodríguez, soy director veterano de la piscicultura continental en la Organización de Piscicultores Españoles. Quisiera hacerle a la primera intervención, concretamente al señor Lechner, respecto al tema estadístico. Mi de formación profesional es de economista y estadístico, de hace mucho tiempo. Y me preocupa la estadística y por eso agradezco esta toma de datos. Pero hay una cuestión. A mí me obsesiona, diríamos, el volumen global del tema, más que a veces el detalle, porque el detalle sabemos que a veces se pierde calidad. Bien, el mundo está creciendo en torno a 1 millón de toneladas anuales en acuicultura. 1 millón de toneladas anuales y a un 10% de crecimiento interanual en los últimos 30 años. Y como estadístico, yo solicito mi parte de la tarta. Europa, de los 27, tiene que crecer en torno a un 10% de eso. Nosotros tenemos que crecer, para que las cuentas salgan, en torno a 100.000 toneladas anuales. Si no sale eso, todo lo demás es fallo. Y no crecemos, me consta, a 100.000 toneladas anuales, que es un 10% en función de la población. 5.000 millones, 500 millones. Aunque Europa tiene a nuestro favor mayor propensión al consumo. Eso es lo que me preocupa. Gracias.
Sí, muchas gracias, Raúl. ¿Alguno de los dos ponentes tiene alguna idea sobre por qué se produce ese gap?
Do you have a mic here? It's a very valid question. Apologies for trying to answer that in English, but I must say that from the current point in time, we have just made the very first step. And anything that would go into answering your question at least would require a statistically solid basis and an agreed way how to measure European shares, total increase of aquaculture and the relations to then come to the right policies. According to what I would say, we are just at the beginning of trying to develop capabilities to finally answer your question. Because today what I have presented is just again a measurement method, and your question would have to be answered rather by creating better statistics, creating more solid statistics, and following and analyzing a measurement over the time. So I'm a little bit reluctant in that very early period of having just something as a proposal to measure the European level and then perhaps match it in a global context, already to conclude about something that would have to come from the policy side or from the community side altogether to then come back to a situation where we could increase the European share, take a look at the total consumption and see how to shape the policies correctly.
Gracias. Una pregunta por allí, por favor.
Hola, buenos días. Soy Ángeles Longa y trabajo en el Consejo Regulador Mexillón de Galicia. ¿No? Ok. Bueno, otra vez buenos días. Soy Ángeles Longa y trabajo en el Consejo Regulador Mexillón de Galicia. Como mi compañero de antes, por formación soy bióloga y me interesa mucho y me preocupa bastante la cuestión de cómo se va a medir con esos indicadores el impacto ambiental de las actividades, porque a la que yo me dedico en concreto, que es la conquilicultura, el cultivo de moluscos, la imagen que se da no es la adecuada, a mi modo de ver, porque los indicadores lo que buscan es cuantificar los impactos negativos de las actividades, no los positivos, y la nuestra lo tiene. Entonces, se están barajando 4 indicadores para los cuales no hay un valor en lo que se refiere a cultivo de moluscos. Entiendo que tendría que ser un valor negativo, porque ni hace uso de piensos, no emite ni nitrógeno ni fósforo, pero no se cuantifica ni a nivel económico como un servicio que reporta este cultivo a la sociedad, ni se cuantifica como un beneficio social. Entonces, creo que habría que ajustar mejor esos indicadores. Gracias.
Sí, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. The question is relevant, and I can confirm that we have just discussed this intensively in the last couple of weeks and during the creation of that report. What we have currently done is we have started off with a set of indicators also for the environmental impact, positive or negative, where we have just chosen those indicators where we had a solid database. This is usually, as you correctly say, not the extremely professional way to do it. Usually you would define, as you have said, environmental concerns against environmental benefits, social benefits against cultural concerns even, draw a whole picture and then evaluate the respective target data for defining indicators. You're perfectly right in asking the definition of the indicators and how has that been put together. The reply here is that unfortunately for a holistic approach, we just do not have any data. You might define that you want to measure, let's say, well-being in the local area according to social dimensions, but then you do not have any statistics on that. You might measure social and environmental components that are there, but there are no tracks of statistical data over the years, not even in local communities or in national member states, and not at all at the European level. So you might have one or two member states that have one dimension filled with data, and the rest there is nothing. So taking a total European approach here, we had to work with what is there, and we fully acknowledge the validity of your question and the defects that we are having still in the first step. We have limited the environmental impacts to just emission of phosphorus, emission of nitrogen, the fish meal and fish oil use. This is all that we have done in the first try to develop indicators that are related to environmental issues but do not describe the whole picture of environmental concerns. This is the first step that shall trigger exactly this discussion that comes back to the very reason of your question, and we are very happy that you can bring it up this way, because we are looking now for input from all these things and also scientifically for a better data set where we might be able to answer your question in the future on a data set that we have collected all together.
Muchas gracias. Creo que de esta pregunta se deriva la conclusión inevitable de que es necesario disponer de esos datos y evidentemente hacérselo llegar a los científicos que los están estudiando, y esto se aplica tanto al sector como a las propias administraciones y tomamos buena nota de ello. Una última pregunta por allí, por favor.
Thank you. My name is Andom.
Microphone closer.
My name is Andom. I'm Assistant Director of CZ Risk. Thank you, first of all, for inviting us here. First of all, I would also like to point out that I'm representing more than just CZ Risk here. I know there are not many NGOs represented here. That's not a sign of disinterest, I must assure you. It's more a sign of lack of resources. But in coming here, we've been discussing with, first of all, our own CZ Risk national members, but also with other international NGOs such as WWF, the Coalition Clean Baltic and BirdLife International. And I hope to consolidate this cooperation also after this conference. My question is also regarding indicators, Mr. Lechner. Apart from, of course, certain concerns on the environmental side, because that is our angle, we see scope for more indicators there. My question relates to your statement that indicators are not political. I would argue they are, because if they are supposed to underpin policies, the choice of indicators is very crucial in this process. And the second question is, you also mentioned that the JRC does not make any judgment on targets. My concern is a bit if we want to move towards indicators underpinning EU as well as national policies, I would think the logical steps to take is first to have the targets and then to see which are the indicators that best match these targets and can be used eventually to evaluate progress and environmental, social and economic performance of the sector. So how do you see that process of developing maybe a future vision set of indicators that can in future really underpin policies?
Thanks again. Again, a very well thought and valid question. To reply, I mean, it's been two questions actually. The first, are indicators policy relevant? Indicators per se are just tools, and it always depends on how you're using the tools. Therefore, for a mathematician, statistician, the indicators themselves just measure something, and analyzing and drawing conclusions would then be the policy act of bringing that into meaningful regulation or description of the whole sector. Therefore, strictly mathematically speaking, indicators are completely neutral. But this is always a matter of the type of indicators and the set of indicators which we wanted to spell out only to identify what is possible. If you wanted to come to a completely biased and correlation-free set of indicators that considers all different dimensions, economic, social, environmentally, correctly, then of course we would have to fill in other indicators for which today we do not have the data. And therefore you're right, the indicators themselves, I would say, still politically not meaningful or politically not connected to a policy trend or direction, but the selection and the choice of indicators, there you're right, could already give a certain swing. And we're fully aware that what we have presented here is the first step into having indicators at all. So this is why I said I wanted to change, and we will probably change the title of that publication, making it a step towards indicators or an approach towards indicators, rather than having something that in a political environment easily just becomes manifested just the second it's out, and then it's not discussed anymore, but taken as a holy Bible of the indicators and measurements. So I think we need to spell out more clearly, as I said during the presentation, that this is not the final step, but it's the first step towards developing something as balanced as you have asked for. The second question, targets. Very nice, but a very interesting chicken and egg problem. Because if you identify targets and then you realize that you are unable to measure where you are, then it is really becoming difficult in just moving towards a target. If I'm blindfolding you and I'm telling you just go into that direction after having turned around 5 times and you cannot even see the direction, you might know that there is a target, but you would not know how to get there. So we are having difficulties both ways. After having indicators agreed one day, we could also define then targets. But again, the targets will not be all targets that are of interest. And we also need to work the other way around, defining reasonable and valid and important targets, and then getting the database in to define additional indicators, filling the gaps.
Muchas gracias. El siguiente ponente, Ernesto Penas, me dice que no tiene inconveniente en que se haga alguna otra pregunta más, así que vuelvo a ofrecer la posibilidad a los participantes si quieren hacer alguna otra pregunta. Si no es así, bueno, adelante por favor.
Esto en mi pueblo dicen la ocasión la pintan calva, es una buena ocasión. Yo, en el tema de la utilización de los terrenos, el tema de preferencia de ubicación, que has puesto muy bien el ponente, he echado de menos que se haga alguna alusión al tema continental. Siempre hablamos de costa, no hablamos de la ubicación en terrenos continentales, agua dulce o aguas frescas, aguas frías. Entonces, tenemos un gravísimo problema en España, porque tenemos pospuesta el lugar de ubicación dentro del uso de la ley de aguas a un último lugar. No nos permiten desarrollar la acuicultura continental en España, especialmente en aguas embalsadas y en una serie de usos. Es decir, estamos pospuestos totalmente, estamos condenados en España a no desarrollar la acuicultura continental adecuadamente, porque estamos en 5º lugar y nos correspondería estar en 2º lugar junto con regadíos y usos agrarios. Y eso para nosotros es un hándicap enorme. Sabemos que la acuicultura a nivel mundial, el desarrollo de la continental o aguas frescas o agua dulce, actualmente es el 70% de la producción mundial de la acuicultura y el gran desarrollo viene por la continental, con todo el respeto y cariño a los marinos, sin duda ninguna, que bueno, tendrán en el futuro y demás, pero la realidad actual es que la acuicultura continental tiene un peso enorme y en España estamos lastrados por la ley de aguas que nos pospone a un lugar donde hay preferencia en cualquier otro tipo de uso. Y eso pues es un hándicap terrible. Gracias.
Bueno, no sé si eso es una pregunta para nuestros oradores, pero en cualquier caso, del peso de la acuicultura española en la acuicultura europea es prueba de la capacidad de los empresarios españoles de sobreponerse a todas esas dificultades. Sí, señor Leclerc.
I can only have a limited contribution to this question, which rather goes into the general policy domain. But I can tell you from the statistics that we have seen on the total production, you could see the importance of Spain in the whole large bar that shows that 3 member states are making up to 80 or 85% of the total production. So statistics like these also show the weights that certain individual member states have, and it makes this simpler to also, let's say, respect the position in terms of production or in terms of total weight in other categories of Spain or other member states. The other thing is, for the very first time, coming back to your freshwater argument, for the very first time at the European level now we can differ at all between sectors like marine or freshwater or shellfish, where we have aggregated the data at a European level, and also this gives us at least the opportunity to look into a freshwater sector without interference from other sectors and having aquaculture in total. So the statistics help a little bit of having the national perspective against the sectoral perspective, and then I need to pass on to the policy level.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a word on this. I presented a table that had columns that refer to the coastline. But this does not mean that the aquaculture guidelines that we are working on will be only for sea aquaculture. We're only talking about mainland aquaculture, and the potential is there as well. We probably just need a bit more time to, again, gather figures about availability of space there. And one of the things that we looked at, and this was one of the comments that we also heard in Salzburg and in other consultations, we've stopped talking about marine planning precisely because we wanted to make clear that we're talking about spatial planning. We're just not talking about the sea and the coastline. We're talking about the mainland as well.
Sí, gracias. Eso es verdad, y además aquí tenemos colegas de países que no tienen costa precisamente. Hungría, Eslovaquia, en fin, otros países, con lo cual, desde luego, no es así. Si no hay más preguntas, yo, con la indulgencia de los participantes, quisiera hacer una rápida. Teniendo en cuenta los indicadores que hemos visto y el repaso general al panorama de la acuicultura europea, los ponentes consideran que la acuicultura europea del futuro, la fuerza, digamos, motriz, la fuerza que la va a impulsar, será factores como el mayor valor en el momento de la exportación, o quizás el deseo de competir en los mercados interiores de la Unión Europea con los productos que estamos recibiendo, o simplemente consideraciones quizás más locales de tipo socioeconómico, de mantener el empleo o la estabilidad en la situación que tenemos ahora, o quizás otros factores, ¿no?, que no he mencionado. ¿Cuál será el main driving force para el futuro?
Thanks. That's nice. It's a nice question. Well, I think that the driving force, as you said, has to be and will have to be a bit a combination of all of them. There's policy concerns that are related to the fact that we cannot continue fishing out of the sea whatever we want to take out of the sea. You've seen from the first graph there seems to be a sort of natural limit, and as we keep consuming more and more and more fish, we have to make sure that fish comes from somewhere. So that would be a policy concern. In terms of wanting to compete, so the competitiveness angle, and we've looked at internal market, but the world is a big place. There's very nice and very lucrative markets also outside the EU that can be targeted. And that would clearly be a driving force for the business that we want to grow, that we want to expand and do better and better. There's of course also again we go into a policy consideration of growth and job in local areas and rural areas and coastal areas. Where aquaculture can have quite a big impact, a big impact in terms of jobs locally and growth locally, and maintaining communities that depend on fisheries and aquaculture. So certainly I would see all of these three elements as driving forces. I would not be able to say one or the other. Clearly there are many actors that have to play here, and I think all of these actors will come and look at aquaculture and we want to make it grow for all of these concerns actually, because a competitive industry gives jobs and growth locally and contributes to food security for citizens and may maintain the environment in good status in certain cases where aquaculture does contribute actually to maintaining biodiversity in certain areas. So I think it would be a combination of all of them that would be sufficient driving force for all of us to make it happen.
Muy bien. Pues muchísimas gracias a todos. Perdón a Ernesto Penas, que seguro que lo repercutirá a la pausa del café de los participantes. Espero que sea lo mínimo. Muchas gracias.
You want to sit in the middle? I'll sit here in the middle.
Muchas gracias, Carlos. Tomo el relevo y vamos a iniciar la parte de estas jornadas relativa al debate, y me gustaría, sin emplear mucho tiempo, porque la oportunidad es hoy para que se expresen ustedes, permítame simplemente unos minutos para tratar de orientar el debate, estableciendo claramente, en la medida de lo posible, cuál es el contexto de esta discusión. ¿Cuál es el problema que tratamos de solucionar? La potencialidad de la acuicultura en la Unión Europea teóricamente tiene todos los elementos necesarios. Tenemos una política de investigación en materia de acuicultura que es puntera en el mundo, con un importante apoyo de la Unión Europea que queremos que continúe. Tenemos un marco de ayudas financieras muy importante que también queremos reforzar y continuar. Tenemos un marco legislativo estable. Tenemos un mercado que consume ávidamente 12 millones de toneladas anuales de productos de la pesca y de la acuicultura. Teóricamente lo tenemos todo. Y, sin embargo, todos sabemos que la acuicultura europea está estancada, mientras la producción total mundial está aumentando a ritmos extraordinarios cada año. Este es el problema. El problema, por lo tanto, que tenemos que resolver no es tanto un problema de ayudas financieras, ni es tanto un problema de investigación, ni de un marco legislativo inestable, ni de que no haya mercado. El problema es que, al margen de todos estos elementos fundamentales, seguimos teniendo toda una serie de dificultades de tipo administrativo que frenan el desarrollo acuícola, y tenemos todavía una serie amplia de oportunidades aún no plenamente aprovechadas. Por lo tanto, el debate de esta mañana, reconociendo la importancia que tiene el marco financiero, el marco legislativo, la investigación, los mercados, el verdadero debate que queremos plantear hoy es cuáles son y cómo podemos resolver esas dificultades de tipo administrativo y cuáles son esas oportunidades todavía no plenamente aprovechadas, porque no importa lo que invirtamos en ayudas financieras, no importa lo que invirtamos en investigación, si no resolvemos esas dificultades y si no aprovechamos las oportunidades todavía poco aprovechadas, no seremos capaces de efectivamente hacer que la producción acuícola europea despegue. Por eso, Ernesto Bianchi presentó los planes de la Comisión Europea, que son de que el futuro marco de ayudas financieras de la Unión Europea esté acompañado por un plan nacional para tratar de solventar esas dificultades administrativas y para tratar de establecer los mecanismos que nos ayuden a potenciar esas oportunidades no plenamente aprovechadas. Y el marco financiero futuro solo será útil para relanzar la acuicultura europea en la medida en que podamos encontrar respuestas adecuadas a esas dos preguntas: cómo resolver las dificultades administrativas y cómo aprovechar las oportunidades todavía no plenamente aprovechadas. Ese es el debate en el que nos gustaría centrarnos hoy. Para ello, la Comisión ha repartido un documento en el que presentamos, como dijo Ernesto Bianchi, las que son, a nuestro juicio, inicialmente esos elementos que tenemos que examinar. Les hemos presentado un documento en el que hemos identificado estas 4 grandes áreas que ha explicado Ernesto, y nos gustaría centrar el debate, naturalmente, en estas 4 áreas y también, naturalmente, en todos aquellos elementos que la Comisión no haya considerado, no haya reflejado en este documento, y el objeto y el resultado claro y nítido que pretendemos lograr de estas jornadas es tener de parte de ustedes una idea clara, completa, de cuáles son esos deberes que todos tenemos que llevar adelante, tanto a nivel de los Estados miembros como a nivel de la Unión Europea, cada uno en el respeto de sus respectivas competencias, para tratar de resolver estas dificultades administrativas y tratar de desbloquear estas oportunidades todavía no aprovechadas. Este es el debate que les proponemos y, por lo tanto, yo les sugiero como metodología de trabajo que pasemos a analizar, en primer lugar, esas 4 grandes áreas que les hemos propuesto y después veamos qué otras áreas son importantes para ustedes que no hemos abordado nosotros. En ese sentido, yo les pediría que abordemos en primer lugar la cuestión, efectivamente, de las dificultades administrativas para obtener licencias de acuicultura, tanto en zonas marítimas como en zonas continentales. Hemos hecho un pequeño resumen de estas cuestiones. Como dijo antes Ernesto Bianchi, sabemos que el exceso de burocracia es una dificultad, pero tenemos que avanzar más en el conocimiento de cuáles son concretamente esas dificultades y cómo las podemos resolver. Yo les invito a partir de este momento a que nos den su experiencia y sus ideas sobre cómo abordar este tema. Les pediría, como siempre, que aquellos que intervengan expresen su nombre y a qué sector representan. Esperamos sus intervenciones. Sí.
Thank you. You hear me? So, it's more a comment. I am Arnaud Chaperon. I am a producer of trout and sturgeon in France and Spain, and I am the president of the European Federation of Producers in Aquaculture. So, I just want to say that we have organized a meeting 2 weeks ago in Brussels. The name was Aquaculture in Motion, and we have discussed of the same topics than today. I think that it's important to identify the responsibilities of each stakeholder, each sector. Concerning the producers, that's clear that we have our own responsibility. Concerning the national level, we are all putting pressure on these national strategic guidelines. But I think that concerning Europe, we have also to push on two very important aspects. The first one is the level playing field, because if we have not to respect the same rules than the other countries, that's quite impossible to develop aquaculture. The second aspect is the information of the consumer. So I see it in the last part of your proposal, but I think that we have to put pressure on it concerning the defrosted products, concerning the information of, for example, a fresh product has to be fresh, but a defrosted product with just a lemon juice, you have just to put on the packaging processed in Europe. You have not to put that it's a product from Vietnam, that it's defrosted and so on, because it's cooking. So you have to push at the European level also this information of the consumer. Thank you.
Okay. Gracias. Tomamos nota de los dos puntos. ¿Más intervenciones? Gerd.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gerd Konrad. I'm representing the Federal Republic of Germany in this meeting. First, I'd like to thank Spain and the Commission for this invitation, because we in Germany just started with the work on the National Strategic Plan, and this meeting will be quite helpful. And therefore, I would ask, or my first question is whether we could get all these presentations we got today in written form. That would be quite helpful. Okay, thank you. The second point is coming to this paper of ideas, and I think it's a very good paper. It's a very good start. But nevertheless, I had a point that we could call objective zero, or the general objective. That's what we learned in Germany. That's the public opinion. And we learned in Germany that these environmental groups take over a leading role in the public opinion. And the local authorities, our regional authorities, who have to decide about the application to build a new fishing farm, are very often quite helpless against this public opinion ruled by the environmental groups. I think we have to work, before we go into the details here on the other four objectives, how we can give the local authorities or the regional authorities the help they needed in the discussion that will come on their decision-making process. In my eyes, it would be quite helpful if the Commission, both GDs, GD Mare and GD Environment, could present a short paper where they give notice how important the agriculture could be for regional and local areas, and that what a lot of environmental groups always try to make pressure on, that agriculture is not per se something against sustainability. And I think that could be quite helpful. Then what I learned in Germany is that a lot of this bureaucracy, that is sometimes something people who don't want to decide about that, they give them a chance to hinder it. And because for political reasons, they don't want to do that. On the administration, on environment, the nature protection administration, for instance. So they have a chance to stop it by the bureaucracy. So we have to work on the public opinion, in my eyes. That is a main factor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerd. Perhaps before I give the floor to more participants, let me react quickly to that one. First of all, having the presentations, I don't see any problem. We will certainly do that. On your question, this is very important, and we are very conscious that there is a problem of image on aquaculture, and this might be one of the factors that might hinder aquaculture development in Europe. We are certainly trying to do something that would hopefully do a lot to resolve that. We are working currently in the Commission at guidelines on how aquaculture and Natura 2000 relate to each other. The idea is to try to demonstrate and to provide guidelines of what is the relationship between aquaculture development and nature conservation, what are the opportunities, what are the limits, and therefore we believe that in providing or by providing these guidelines, we should be able actually to resolve part of this bad image. But I take note of your comment that over and beyond these guidelines, whether they will be sufficient or not to resolve this problem, we will have to analyze it. And then I take note that, yes, we do have a problem of public opinion perception of aquaculture. This doesn't help aquaculture, and this is indeed a problem we have to resolve. Let's see if the guidelines do the trick. If they don't entirely, we'll have to think of something else. ¿Más intervenciones?
Soy Gustavo Larrazábal, presidente del grupo Tina Menor, productor de peces de cultivo en España. También soy miembro de la Junta Directiva de APROMAR, la Asociación Española de Productores de Cultivos Marinos, vicepresidente de la Federación Europea, de la que Arno es el presidente, que habló antes, y también chairman de la Plataforma Tecnológica y de Innovación de la Acuicultura Europea. El título de la conferencia de hoy no puede ser más importante para nuestro futuro. Se trata de definir cómo crecer, el camino al crecimiento. Ese es el gran problema que tenemos. Efectivamente, don Ernesto lo ha definido muy bien. No crecemos en la última década. La agricultura europea está estancada. Mientras que de ese 65% al que hemos llegado en importaciones, el porcentaje de productos de cultivo hechos en otras partes del mundo y traídos a Europa es creciente y cada vez más importante. Desconozco la cifra, pero seguro que es mucho mayor que la contribución de productos producidos en Europa. De los 4 puntos que ha sugerido la Comisión para la discusión de hoy, los 2 primeros son muy precisos y son absolutamente correctos y probablemente son el número 1 y el número 2 de nuestros problemas para crecer. En el primero de ellos, el tema de procedimientos administrativos, el red tape, todos los obstáculos para el crecimiento que tenemos en esa materia, pues yo me temo que no se puede resolver sino con decisión política, porque es tan compleja la maraña a la que tenemos que enfrentarnos para conseguir las licencias para producir, que lo hace prácticamente imposible. El estudio presentado por el primer ponente habla de 18 meses para España, pero 18 meses son en aquellos proyectos que concluyen con un permiso. Pero es que hay muchísimos que nunca concluyen, que al cabo de 4 años, que al cabo de 5 años, todavía no hay los permisos necesarios para producir productos de acuicultura en España. Y en el resto de Europa se está convirtiendo lo mismo. Nuestros colegas franceses dicen que es absolutamente imposible conseguir una licencia en Francia, los portugueses también, los italianos también, los griegos, todos tienen el mismo problema que tenemos nosotros en cuanto a las licencias. Por ejemplo, aquí hay representantes de las administraciones relacionadas con la agricultura, pero es que hay otras administraciones que imponen procedimientos que no están en esta sala y que no están escuchando los problemas que tiene la agricultura para crecer. ¿Dónde están las autoridades medioambientales? Normalmente no están. ¿Dónde están las de ordenación del territorio? Efectivamente, si no hay una planificación del espacio, no podemos avanzar. Por respetar al señor moderador, que ha dicho que vamos a centrarnos primero en los 4 puntos, en los otros puntos que yo tendría que hablar los voy a posponer a una segunda intervención. Solo querría decir, por último, que de los cuatro elementos que habéis propuesto, los 2 primeros son muy concretos y muy ciertos, pero el último es muy inconcreto. Realmente tenemos que encontrar caminos para aumentar nuestra competitividad, pero hay que definirlos, y uno de ellos clarísimo es la información al consumidor, que ha citado también nuestro presidente Arno Chaperón. La información al consumidor es escasa y confunde al consumidor. Cuando no solamente en el tema de el producto congelado que luego se descongela y no se informa correctamente de ello, con lo cual si el ama de casa lo congela posteriormente está incurriendo en un problema en un potencial problema de salud, sino que también el consumidor no tiene información correcta sobre cuáles son las bondades del producto de agricultura. Piensa que no son de la misma calidad. Hay muchísimo que hacer en información al consumidor. Gracias.
Gracias, Gustavo. Allí al fondo.
Gracias. I just made a question to myself. I am Pier Salvador, I come from Italy. I'm a small trout producer and president of the Italian Aquaculture Association, and I cover the 90% of the fish in Italy that is composed from micro and small farmers. The question to myself is why I am here. Because we have not too much money to cover all the conference of the workshop, everything. I am here because I need I feel that is a new mentality, a new approach from the policy, from the political view, from the DG mayor to approach to help the producer. But believe me, we are just in very tragic situation because we have no more space to grow in Italy, just around the EU, because the cost of the bureaucracy is very, very high for us. We just have to destroy the second Berlin Wall, is the bureaucratic wall, because without this we cannot survive. I think that in the very short future we have to have more connection between you and us. You, I intend all the bureaucracy, all the police, all the persons that are in the other part, because we have to stay together and to approach a new mentality for the aquaculture, because aquaculture is very congested with a lot of bureaucracy, because we have a lot of law to respect, and I don't know why the person that work in aquaculture, they must know so big quantity of legislation, of laws. But we are ready we are ready, like producers, we are ready to help and to be helped from you. But, for example, Stefan, you have an indicator, you have just good indicator, but you share this before with the production, before that these indicators are public, because the image, every day the image of aquaculture is not correct to the consumer. We need also this one, with this more to be consultant, to be with you, just to offer a good product, to maintain the quality of that we have now, because the cost of the quality, the safety of the product is just just for the producer. Nobody, no supermarket pay this. Nothing pay this. We cannot continue to propose a new legislation. Because we have just to survive, we have to maintain this legislation, because we have the best product, the most sure product, safety product in the world. But it's very impossible to continue this. And for the other hand, why we produce so few products? We must, in the few products that the consumer use, we must to be the best in the world, and we import more than 70% without any very strong control. This is quite stupid. Second thing, I believe that in the future are more and more NGOs, more and more stakeholders in the aquaculture. But without producers, what we do? For first, it's producer. Without producers, no NGOs, no other stakeholders, no feed companies, nothing. This is a question. Thank you.
José Apolinario.
Buenos días. Yo también saludo la Comisión, el Gobierno de España y la Junta de Galicia por acoger aquí en esta iniciativa y la capacidad de juntar aquí administraciones nacionales, regionales, sector. Eu estou aqui indicado pela administração de Portugal, pero como tenho trabalhado muito com a produção também, gostaria de deixar aqui 3 notas. Primeiro, há ponto base que é a orientação legislativa e política que vem ao nível europeu. E o colega alemão ha abordado que é, por exemplo, a articulação com Natura 2000. É necessário revisitar pouco, mirar a legislação para saber se toda a legislação que se cria não é restritiva, não impede, não afasta o investimento em aquicultura, por exemplo, em áreas de marinha, de aquicultura marinha. Segundo aspecto, em muitos casos, os produtores de aquacultura europeus competem com a aquacultura que se faz em outras partes do mundo em uma situação de dumping social e ambiental. Em muitos casos, temos nível de exigência para a produção que não é acompanhada por muito do peixe que comemos importado de todas as partes do mundo. Terceira nota. Há aqui uma situação de concorrência, de competição. Sim, a Comissão pode demandar aos Estados-membros para fazer planificação de áreas, pero é necessário ver que os quadros, os indicadores que se apresentaram sobre a área disponível, há uma grande competição em las costas, com o turismo, com a seguridade, com a pesca local e artesanal. A competição é muito intensa. E muitas vezes, onde se autoriza a atividade de aquacultura é onde não houve uma autorização para o turismo ou para outra atividade mais rentável em tempo útil. Pronto. E, portanto, há aqui problema de planificação, pero ter em conta também que há uma grande competição para a utilização de espaço. Finalmente, a importância aqui é caminhar por la simplificação. Há muitas entidades administrativas em processo de licenciamento, pero, sobretudo, é necessário criar uma clara liderança, isto é, quem é a entidade em cada Estado-membro que coordena o processo de licenciamento com todas as diversas entidades que intervêm no licenciamento, para poder agilizar os prazos. Porque há leis com prazos de resposta em cada serviço, com intervenção em cada serviço da administração. E o problema aqui é problema mais de coordenação do processo de licenciamento. Eu, por exemplo, posso dizer que eu entrevi personalmente num processo para se conseguir uma estrutura offshore com alguma dimensão e que é levado 10 meses. 10 meses, para depois de todas as fases. Pero este processo implicou uma intervenção coordenada com diferentes entidades. Portugal, por exemplo, tem hoje manual de procedimentos que procura agilizar procedimentos. Pero, em todo caso, a questão que me parece clave é garantir articulação e, portanto, haver uma liderança clara sobre a entidade que faz o licenciamento em cada Estado-membro. Finalmente, buenas práticas. A Comissão deveria fomentar, divulgar, promover buenas práticas de licenciamento e de procedimentos nos diferentes Estados-membros, porque seria uma forma, meio também de caminhar por la simplificação. Porque a clave se chama simplificação. Simplificação de licenciamento, simplificação de procedimentos. Gracias.
Sí, José, una pequeña y rápida respuesta, aunque por supuesto que trataremos de dar respuesta un poco a las cuestiones más generales, pero justamente esa cuestión de diseminar buenas prácticas es uno de los grandes objetivos de la metodología de la consulta abierta que proponemos como forma de gobernar la acuicultura, ya que no es una competencia exclusiva, no se puede gobernar a través de reglamentos, pero sí queremos establecer este sistema de consulta abierta que debe ser un foro, entre otras cosas, de intercambio de buenas prácticas.
Yes, hello, good morning. This is Pablo Avila, coming from a member of the Committee of Aquaculture from the GFCM. And I do appreciate all the work which has been done on indicators, which is really good and helpful. But I would like to add on, together with these last comments on coordination, which are really important, and related to the administrative procedures and licensing. Of course, there's need of political willingness to begin with. I'm not talking about political willingness at ministry level, but higher level, because we need also this coordination among different ministries, as our colleague said before. Secondly, we have to develop a legal framework concerning all the procedures. Third, we need, as mentioned, coordination. Also, we have to develop tools for decision makers. This is quite important. Sometimes there is a lack of knowledge, and knowledge and tools are needed at all levels, even at technical level, because at the end it's a technical decision which is going to be playing an important role to give a license or not. So tools are needed. We're talking about mapping, we're talking about GIS system, we're talking about knowledge on the coastal zone and knowledge of possible sites for aquaculture. We have to make the administration to go ahead of the companies. This is quite an issue, because companies, the timing for companies is much shorter than the timing for administration. So I think we should work on that as well, which is an important thing. Also, we have to work on standardizations of processes, which is also an important issue, and the criteria for evaluation of projects. I have to say that from the GFCN and from the CAC committee, we've been working a lot on these issues, and actually there's a really nice work done by CEPMAR here in Galicia concerning all the Mediterranean, which helps a lot on identifying all these gaps and all these necessities. So I think coordination among different bodies, different institutions and different working groups is needed as well. Thank you very much.
Okay. Gracias. Tenemos tiempo antes de la pausa del café a una pregunta más de aquel lado.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Marcin.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Marcin Ruciński. I represent here the government of Poland. I'd like to first of all thank the organizers, the Commission and the authorities of Spain for organizing this conference, which is a very important and timely event. I'd like to focus on 2 points, which are basically on inland aquaculture and freshwater aquaculture. It comes as a no surprise, I think, to everybody, because this is mainly the aquaculture we have in Poland. First, it's the image of aquaculture. I would agree with the German colleague, Gerd Konrad, and add on that we have a research that shows that the positive impact of traditional aquaculture, air pond aquaculture, mainly carp, on the environment is actually exceeding the production-related benefits, and by far. So I think if we're talking about communication to the wider public of, let's say, the image of aquaculture, I think this could be a very important factor in changing to the positive the image of aquaculture. Secondly, we have a problem for many years now of the negative impact of predators, and namely the black cormorant on aquaculture sites. And we think that in the guidelines this should be addressed at two levels, at European levels, by developing the effective tools to keep cormorant population at environmentally sustainable levels. Secondly, at national level, where we could have, let's say, aid and help for member states to develop effective measures to regulate the population. And also we hope that the Aquaculture Advisory Council in the future may play a role in this. We understand this is a very difficult problem for the Commission. You need to liaise with DG Environment on this. But we hope that this problem is addressed properly, because our analysis shows that this hinders very much the growth of inland aquaculture in our situation, certainly. And as was shown by JRC analysis, this is a stagnation. So we hope that through the guidelines the problem is addressed and we can basically have a growth in this sector. Thank you.
Gracias, Marcin. Y para respetar el tiempo del debate, les propongo que vayamos a tomar el café ahora y reanudamos la reunión exactamente a las 11:20.